Hey everyone, welcome back. We're tackling a big one today, AI, and specifically how it's changing the way we learn, maybe even faster than we realize.
It's really something, isn't it?
Totally. And, for anyone tuning in, don't worry if you're not like a tech whiz. We're going to break this down. The goal here is to figure out, is AI a shortcut to knowledge or...
Or are we short-circuiting our brains? I like that.
Right, that's the big question. And well, I'm no expert, but luckily we've got one with us.
Haha. Well, I try. My background is actually in cognitive science, but I got fascinated by how AI is starting to almost like mirror learning processes.
So you're seeing this firsthand. Let's jump in with some real-world examples. I was going through the research for this, and it's kind of mind-blowing. Like, how many of us use Google Translate or something similar?
Oh, all the time. I even use it for like reading research papers in other languages.
Me too.
Yeah.
You used to be, you'd get the basic idea, but now it's like these AI translators are getting so good, they're almost poetic,
It's the nuance they're starting to pick up. Idioms, cultural stuff, that's the really tricky part.
Right. And it's not just language. AI tackling math problems, like not just basic stuff, but complex equations. It's wild. And then there are AI tutors that personalize your learning.
That's what I'm talking about. That personalized approach is huge, GE. In a classroom, a teacher can only do so much for each student, right? But AI can track your progress, pinpoint exactly where you're struggling, and suggest ways to improve, all tailored to you.
It's like having a personal tutor available 24/7. Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting for me. The source mentioned AI and creativity. I mean, we've all seen those AI art generators. It's kind of freaky how good they're getting. But is that real creativity?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? On one hand, you have AI generating incredible art and music. But on the other hand, is it truly creative if it's based on algorithms and data sets? Is it genuine expression, or is it sophisticated mimicry? There's a lot to unpack there.
Definitely something to think about.
Eh.
Okay, so AI in learning. It's not all sunshine and roses, though, right? Our source also brought up some potential drawbacks.
Yeah, and I think it's crucial that we talk about these. AI has amazing potential, but we have to be realistic about the downsides, too.
Totally. So hit us with it. What are we talking about here?
Well, the source mentioned a few things, and they're all interconnected in a way. Superficial understanding, weakened creativity, loss of focus, even psychological dependence. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a bit overwhelming when you put it like
Yeah.
that. Let's break it down, starting with, well, I guess the first one. Superficial understanding. What does that even mean in this context?
It means, sure, you can use an AI translator to have a conversation in another language, but do you really understand the nuances of that language? The cultural context, the slang, the little things that give it depth?
So it's like, yeah, you can get the gist, but you might miss out on the richness and the subtleties. It's like the difference between, I don't know, reading a travel blog and actually immersing yourself in a new culture. Right.
Exactly. Or think about history. You could use AI to translate an ancient text, which would be amazing, but without understanding the historical context, the cultural influences, the author's intent, you're just scratching the surface.
Right. It's like the difference between knowing the dates of war and understanding the human stories behind it, the causes, the consequences. Okay, that makes total sense. Now, what about creativity? How does leaning too heavily on AI affect our own creative abilities?
Okay, so imagine this. You rely on AI to solve every problem, to write every song, to create every piece of art. Sure, it might be efficient, but what happens to your own creative muscles?
We'll get kind of flabby, right? Like if you never exercise.
Exactly. The process of struggling with a problem, brainstorming ideas, experimenting, even failing. That's how we develop our creativity. By constantly relying on AI, we risk losing that critical skill.
So it's not just about the end product. It's about the process, the journey of figuring things out for ourselves.
Exactly. And that ties into the next drawback, loss of focus. When we're used to AI giving us instant answers, it's harder to engage in deep, sustained thinking.
Makes sense. We're so used to instant gratification these days, thanks to the internet and, well, everything being available at our fingertips.
And that instant gratification, it's like a dopamine hit for our brains. We get a little rush of pleasure, and over time, our brains crave more of that.
Yeah.
So when we have to actually sit down and concentrate on something complex, something that takes time and effort.
It's almost painful. Our brains are like, no, thank you. I want the easy stuff.
Exactly. And that can make it tough to really engage with complex ideas, analyze information critically, or stick with a problem long enough to come up with a truly innovative solution.
Wow, that's scary. It's like our attention spans are shrinking and we're becoming like intellectually lazy. Okay, so we've talked about superficial understanding, creativity, focus. Now let's talk about that last one. Psychological dependence on AI. What does that actually look like?
Well, think of it this way. You become so used to having AI as a crutch that you start to doubt your own ability to learn and solve problems without it. It's like students who rely on calculators for simple math. They might be perfectly capable of doing the math in their heads, but because they're so used to the calculator.
Screws up without it. It's like they've forgotten how to do the math themselves.
Exactly. And it's not just students. It can happen to all of us. We start to rely on AI for everything, and we lose confidence in our own abilities. We start to think, well, the AI can do it better, faster, so why bother?
And that brings us to the big, scary question our source asked. If AI can do it all, why bother studying it all? If we can just Google anything, or ask an AI to write our essays, or solve complex equations for us, what's the point of actual learning?
That's the question, isn't it? And the answer is more important now than ever. We have to remember that AI tools, for all their incredible abilities, are just that, tools. They can help us, inform us, automate tasks, but they can't replicate the human capacity for true understanding and wisdom.
It's like you could use a calculator to solve a math problem, but if you don't understand the underlying concepts, have you really learned anything?
Exactly. Or think of it this way. You could use a GPS to navigate a new city, which is incredibly useful. I do it all the time.
Me too.
Right. But if you never bother to actually learn the streets, explore the different neighborhoods, get a feel for the city yourself, have you really experienced it?
It's like the difference between looking at a picture of a place and actually going there, smelling the air, feeling the sun on your skin. You experience it on a whole other level.
Exactly. And that's what true learning is all about. It's about connecting the dots, thinking critically, applying knowledge in new and creative ways. That's what makes us human, and that's what AI, at least for now, can't replicate.
So it's not about rejecting AI altogether, but finding that balance.
Yeah.
Embracing the amazing things AI can do, while remembering that it's a tool to enhance our own abilities, not to replace them.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Right.
We need to work with AI, not against it, but also not become completely dependent on it.
It's about finding that sweet spot, right? Where we're using AI to our advantage, but not losing sight of our own humanity, our own unique ability to learn and grow.
Absolutely. And that, my friend, is the challenge and the opportunity before us.
Well said. Wow, this has been, as always, a thought-provoking deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought, something to chew on. How do you envision using AI to enhance your own learning journey? What are your boundaries? How do you make sure you're not sacrificing those essential skills, critical thinking, creativity, focus, that are so crucial in this rapidly changing world? Think about it, and let's continue the conversation. That's all the time we have for today, but as always, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.